Hi, welcome back. I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about over the past week, and it's on the topic of habits, but specifically habits that we develop unintentionally, or things we probably don't even know that we're developing as habits. It's like almost every little thing we do in our lives, and when making art, contributes to building habits in these areas. And I want to delve into this topic as it relates to the art process and highlight some of the things we might be building habits out of without even knowing. And the first of which that comes to mind to me is not starting on things, like thinking about working and not working, or sitting down at your desk, tapping out once you see the blank canvas, or anything else we do that puts off or delays starting our art. Each one of these examples plays a role in habit building in the area of starting or not starting your art. And it's tough because some days it really just is difficult to invest yourself in starting anything, depending on what might be going on in your life, or the amount of energy you have or time you have to spend on your art. But in periods of our lives like this, throughout the weeks and months, we're sort of conditioning ourselves to be used to long stretches of time without art. We start being comfortable with it, even though we might be thinking that we should really get back into drawing or do more art. Our mind is so used to not doing it because we're avoiding the negative emotions that we've tagged on to the act of beginning again, that we're avoiding it because we find it safe. So this is a cycle we have to be pretty intentional about breaking and forge new habits that would incentivize us to start more rather than put off starting. Another habit we may tend to build is overthinking, or having certain thoughts float around in our head, like, what should I draw? I'm not good at this, I'm not creative. Why should I draw? Due to various external factors. So and so artist does this, I should do that. Or why can't I do that? Because they do it. I find the fact that we think things like this to any capacity really interesting. What's happening when your mind generates these thoughts on and off is the habit you're building here is pondering on these topics, but you're not building a habit of resolving them or actually getting to the bottom of why you're thinking these things in the first place. So I think it's important to set aside time to actually confront these thoughts and address them at a time when you're not drawing, specifically when you're not drawing. And the reason I say to not unpack these things while you're making your art is, one, you're not giving these thoughts the full attention that they deserve. Your mind is just sort of working in the background on these thoughts. And two is that you're further associating these thoughts with the art practice when they should really be separate. So I would take the time to write about them and really ponder over the reasons as to why we are having these thoughts in the first place, so we don't further perpetuate the habit of associating these feelings and thoughts that don't contribute to the art practice with our art practice. Another habit that I want to touch on is the habit of not branching out or staying in our zone or our own little bubble of interests. I know that some of us might already be aware that we don't branch out and that we focus on certain things that we find interesting. But I want to go into the subconscious part of this topic from my experience. Something that crosses my mind at times is this feeling like my mind has predetermined many aspects of what constitutes a quote-unquote kyokusei painting. What elements, subject matter, style, whatever, are my signature, even though I've never consciously taken a moment to evaluate why I blindly follow these tendencies and why I subconsciously strive towards producing paintings that some part of my mind has deemed that these paintings should consist of these elements. Like why am I doing that? And because of that, I don't explore, or I sort of shy away from ideas, methods, or subject matters that deviate from what I've become accustomed to. And what stands out as interesting to me about this is how much of what we do or don't do with our art isn't even decided by us. There are so many aspects of what we do that are completely subconscious. And I think that's fine. I don't think every little thing needs to be a conscious decision, but I think sometimes we should take some time to challenge or at least investigate the root of our tendencies. Give each one of these little things some focused contemplation. And you can do this by, for example, asking yourself questions like, what are the real reasons I like drawing this particular subject? Or what do I avoid drawing and why? And what would happen if I only tried drawing this thing that I avoid for some amount of time? How would I feel about the subject after? What does it say about me that I'm resisting only drawing this thing for some time? Or why do I always draw in this specific style? And what could that say about my interests or what I'm avoiding? And just play around with these ideas, really investigate yourself. I think there's value in doing that because in doing so, you may discover some things you do have valid, true reasons behind why your subconscious has developed these current preferences. While you might also discover other things that you do and don't think about that you feel that you should do for some unspoken reason, probably don't have good reasons. And maybe you should be deliberate about seeking out new ways to work in those areas. So the whole point here is that we should take the time to analyze our art and ourselves. And maybe we'll uncover those things in our process and in our mind that dictate much of our art practice, whether good or bad, and the underlying reasons behind these things. The last habit that we build for ourselves that I want to talk about is the habit of thinking about how ourselves and our artwork are perceived by others. And the reason I think this habit is important to be aware of is because of how it can affect the art practice in a negative way. Unless your goal for art making is to serve clients or for commercial reasons, where other people's thoughts and opinions about our art actually matter a little bit, why should anyone be anxious or scared about how our work will be perceived? I think something artists tend to be pretty good at is psyching ourselves out of going with our gut or following our own intuition and caving to our largely imagined social expectations instead. I don't think fearing what people have to say about you as an artist or your art is useful at all. This whole endeavor of making art is you. This is just your art practice. You're the only one in control of this. People can say words, and you can decide to let these words take up space in your mind and creep into the driver's seat and start dictating what you do or don't do with your art to appease others. But to me, I believe when it comes to art, the only person we should care to appease is ourselves. This is something that is just so beautiful to me about making art. It's that we can do whatever we want with our own work. It's ours. It's utterly personal. And the act of sharing our art with others at all is so much more intimate and vulnerable than many of us even take the time to consider. So, in recognizing the personal quality of making and sharing art, maybe it'll become easier to realize that nothing anyone will ever say, has ever said, and could ever imagine couldn't possibly matter when it comes to making your art. It just can't fundamentally because it's about what you decide to express and not what other people inflect onto it. So that's it. That's all I have to say about habits and associations. Um, well, no, it's not all I have to say about this topic. There's actually a lot more, but these are the big four topics on my mind right now. And I'd love to hear if other people have habits that they feel they build unconsciously. And if that's the case, please let me know in the comments. So, yeah, thanks for listening.